Last December, I took a trip to Oklahoma City for the Old Blood Noise-hosted Effector Marketplace. But mostly it was an excuse to hang out with Heather Brown, aka godsmom.com, for a few days. And that's when she showed me this for the first time, the Volga Preamp. It's a faithful recreation of her personal SOVTEK MiG50's preamp, and it promises to deliver plenty of chime, a touch of compression, natural-sounding amp-like breakup, a generous dose of low-end harmonics, and punchy mids if you want them. So, let's check it out. Welcome to Get Offset. My name is Emily, and your vibes are off the chart today in a good way. Heather sent me this pedal. She didn't ask me to film this demo, but I'm doing it anyway. Obviously, we're friends, so while that may color my opinion, just listen. If you like the sounds, then maybe you'll like the pedal. If you want to skip my intro/explainer, check out the timestamps in the video description for links to sound samples. As I mentioned a minute ago, the Volga Preamp is based on Heather's SOVTEK MiG50 and was designed entirely with JFETs that had been meticulously and exhaustively voiced, paired, and biased to match that specific amp's frequency response. I personally wasn't as familiar with the MiG50 as I am with other amps, but here's how I understand it and its history as written in Vintage Guitar Magazine by Dave Hunter. According to Hunter, the MiG50 was SOVTEK's first amp and it was released in 1991. It's a two-channel amp where channel 1, which Heather calls the warm circuit, is more like a plexi, and the second channel, which Heather calls the bright channel, is more like a basement amp. The original amp had 2 input volume controls and a 4-band EQ, which Heather has replicated here. These controls interact like the original MiG50, and Heather even kept the input bleed on both channels, which is something the MiG50 is known for. Her overall advice for dialing this in is to treat it more like an amp and less like a pedal. There are a few nice features over the original amp, notably a master output volume, which is this small control right there. You can also switch between channels or blend the two together via this 3-way toggle right there. So let's hear this thing. Heather highly recommends running the Volga into a tube amp, placing it after your drive section and before your modulation and time-based effects. So in a way, that's what I'm doing here. I'm running the Volga into a tube amp. The amp is a Supro Airwave mic'd up with a Sennheiser E906. For guitars, I'm using this custom T-style build by Nicole Olazanak, which is loaded with custom shot pickups from Seymour Duncan. I'm starting on channel 1, the warm channel, with the channel volume at about unity gain, with the output volume maxed. Channel 2 input volume is also down, and I dialed in a sweet spot with the tone controls on the pedal, and I have the tone controls on the amp roughly in the middle, as flat and as centered as I could get them. So let's hear it. That one was for Viv. Before we get into the channel bleed, which I do want to do, let's turn up the channel volume. Yeah, that's how I like it. I mentioned the input bleed earlier, and that's going to become obvious when we increase the input on channel 2, the volume on channel 2. Again, not a huge difference, but it is a meaningful one in my opinion. Now let's switch to channel 2, the warm channel, and we'll turn the input volume down on channel 1. So that's about unity gain. Personally, I hear a bigger difference on the clean sounds from channel 2, especially when I'm just playing it through a regular old amp. It feels like I really love channel 2. Channel 1 is great, don't get me wrong. I love channel 2, so let's hear it. And let's hear that channel bleed. And now let's blend both channels together by moving this toggle to the middle position. So we'll start with input volume at about 9 on both channels 1 and 2. there's really so much you can do with those blended channels, and a very fun thing to do with those blended channels is to just crank them both. Listen, even on the low gain settings, I think the Volga simply makes your rig sound better. I mean, yeah, sure, a part of that is having those EQ controls, but I do agree with Heather that there's a lot of life in this pedal. And then when you turn up the gain, it's not a high gain pedal, but it gives you that amp-like breakup, and it just sounds really good. I think that my favorite way to run it clean, I'm constantly torn between channel 1 and 2 for cleans, but for running one dirty, like having that blended channel and just cranking both of those input volumes, I just think it sounds really, really good. But to be honest, this is not how I usually run Volga. I don't usually run Volga through a tube amp. So next up, I'm going to show you how I've actually been using it as my amplifier at gigs. So let's do it. To use Volga as your amplifier, you need to incorporate a power amp. So I'm using the Seymour Duncan PowerStage 100 stereo, which they sent me ages ago, and I use it all the time. I think it's important to explain the PowerStage 100 stereo since a lot of people aren't familiar with pedalboard power amps, which is what this is. It's a pedalboard power amplifier that is designed to be the perfect companion for modelers like the HX Stomp, amp emulators like the Strymon Iridium, or analog preamp pedals like the Volga. Briefly put, it enables me to use the Volga as my amplifier and push a passive cabinet on stage. This is the backbone of how I've gigged most of this year, the Volga as my amp and the PowerStage pushing a cabinet. Because while going direct is cool and works great when it works, on-stage monitoring isn't always there. And also, more and more, I think that having at least some level of amplification on stage makes for a better audience experience. As the name implies, the PowerStage 100 stereo has 2 stereo ins and a pair of stereo outs. We have the 1/4-inch speaker outs, which is what I'll be using, but it also has left and right balanced XLR outs with an optional analog cab sim. By the way, and this is important, only use speaker cables to go from the PowerStage into a passive speaker. Instrument cables will not suffice. The PowerStage also has a 5-band EQ, which is helpful when you have to tune to the room, especially if you're using a modeler and don't want to menu dive just to adjust your EQ. It delivers 100 watts per output, of which there are 2 at 4 ohms. That scales down with my 8 ohm speaker here, which is a 12-inch 50-watt ceramic speaker by Jupiter. Something I love about the PowerStage is that you can use it with basically any cabinet, and most venues will have some passive cabinet lying around. To me, this beats backlining a mystery amp, but I digress. To start, I'm using this cab behind me, mic'd up with the Shure 545 SD. Again, the cab by itself is by Jupiter. We've already talked about that. And the other pedal I'm using is the Eventide H90, and I'm keeping this super simple. Just some compression and a spring reverb that also has a tremolo in it, just to give myself those amp-like features that you lack in an analog preamp pedal. Typically, I've been using 2 Volgas in series, so we are going to do that first, and then we'll have some fun with stereo later. The Volga at the end of my signal chain is the black one, and it's the first thing we want to dial in. I'm starting with channel 1, and we're going to find a clean sound. Let's talk about the signal chain. The silver Volga, which was from the first run of Volgas, that's going to be my dirty Volga. I'm going to have that on channel 2 when we use it with the gain cranked. And the black Volga, that's a standard production run Volga. That's going to be my clean sound. We're starting with that on channel 1. And then again, once again, I should say, we're going into the H90. So let's get that sound going. Maybe go a little bit brighter. See, the PowerStage is only at about half of the volume, and it's still plenty loud. A little early for Christmas songs, maybe. Now let's dirty it up with that second Volga. Again, I really like the blended sound when using it more as an overdrive, so toggle is in the middle. Nice. It's nice that I'm not clipping the PowerStage. And if you do find yourself clipping a PowerStage, just turn down the input volume and you rely on the big knob on the PowerStage to get your output volume up. I used this at a lot of shows over the summer, and I got a lot of compliments for that tone exactly, with that song especially. Let's switch our clean channel to channel 2. Channel 2 has my heart, it really does. I really hope that sounds as good on recording as it does in the room, because wow. Let's get dirty. I love this setup. I love this rig. It sounds so good. But since the PowerStage 100 stereo is obviously a stereo pedalboard power amp, and since I have two Volgas, let's run them in stereo. Okay, this setup is a little bit different. Since I have two Volgas and since the PowerStage unit I have is a stereo unit, we're running the two Volgas in stereo in front of the Eventide H90. Go big or whatever, right? First, it's the same compressor followed by the spring reverb / tremolo. We will hear everything hard panned, but it isn't anything too wild yet. I'm still using that Jupiter speaker that you can see behind me, but I'm also using my Silktone Econauts 10-inch speaker. That's mic'd up with a Sennheiser E906. The Volga running into the Jupiter is on channel 2. That would be this Volga. And the Volga running into the Silktone is on channel 1. This Volga. Let's hear it with both sides run pretty clean. I want to try that with the gain on channel 1 turned up. I did have to turn down the channel volume. You know, I probably should have said this earlier. I'll have a few affiliate links to things like the PowerStage in the video description. Using those links doesn't cost you any extra money, but a portion of each sale gets shared with me. It's a great way to support this channel doing things that, let's be honest with ourselves and each other, we were probably going to do anyway. Now let's listen to both input gains cranked. I think that sounds cool already. Finally, channel 1 clean, channel 2 cranked. I'm going to try to get these just a little bit past clean now. And we're going to go through some different patches on the H90. This should be a fun one. This patch has a panning tremolo and a plate reverb, so you'll really be able to hear that movement with the PowerStage 100 stereo. Now I've queued up the micro-pitch thick algorithm, which is akin to a doubler, alongside the Amito slap preset from the Hall reverb algorithm. I really like this with some thick chords with the gain up on both channels. So let's set that up. And lastly, just for fun, here's a panning tremolo with a ping pong filter delay for maximum stereo goodness. If you liked this video, check out the one on the screen, which features the Kimchi, a pedal by my friend Dave at Non-Human Audio. Affiliate links in the video description. Like, comment, subscribe, etc. Thanks for watching. Thanks for understanding. Until next time, my name is Emily. Goodbye.